So I don't have my mic with me. I'm not in my studio. I'm at my home, but this is very interesting and I want to cover this. Last year, Microsoft said that they are going to make Google dance when they first acquired OpenAI by buying 50% of the company. And at that point of time, it just felt like this is one of those statements that Microsoft is making because they want to make their investors happy. But as you look at what is going on today, Google, to be honest, is in a very tough spot. And this statement was specifically aimed at them, aimed at the Google team per se. So I want to make people know that we made them dance. I think at that point, Google had just shipped Bard, and the very next day there was some announcement by either Microsoft or Open, and that's exactly after that announcement they made this statement. And if you come to where we are today, Google genuinely is in a crazy tough spot. Why is Google in a tough spot? Where is it facing competition from? Firstly, their Gemini is not doing too well. To be honest, while it has been adopted in a lot of corporates and a bunch of developers are building on top of Google Gemini and they are doing well in certain verticals. For example, Gemini 1.5 is very good when it comes to long form video content or long form content per se. But that's at this point, even Claude 3 Opus is able to do that because it has a longer context window. So let the model winning the model side of the story is not completely figured out. Google right now has the advantage of being a giant. So companies like Claude still can't compete with them as much as they would if they were a company like a Microsoft. Now, on the other hand, there is this direct threat of OpenAI or GPT-4 models. And unlike Claude models, GPT-4 has complete power to rival Google when it comes to these AI models, and I honestly feel that they're winning the game there, and that's primarily because they have Microsoft support, which is like a giant who is directly in a way for years now competing with Google. So the initial move that Microsoft made was adopting more and more users to use Bing. But obviously that wasn't something that worked out for them, even though they ruled out a bunch of features where there was Bing chat, where you could chat with the search engine results. There was image generation feature. They quickly moved back to enabling it across the other browsers as well. So initially, if you were a part of all of this, you would realize that you were not able to use the Bing chat unless you were on the Microsoft's Bing browser. But now you're able to do all of that. And most people still don't use Bing, they still use Google search engine. And most people still use Google Chrome as a browser. I am using it right now. So they are not necessarily facing problems when it comes to browser side of things, but they are most certainly not winning in large language models, where companies like GPT-4 are doing really well. Now let's talk about the search side of story. So a couple of days back, someone posted an image where we saw something like this. So a domain that looks like this was registered by OpenAI for search.chatgpt.com, and this basically means that they are working something on the lines of search. Now it does not explicitly say that it's working on Google search or a competitor for Google search, but it seems that they are working on something on the lines of search. Now this could also be just a backend API to respond or look up web in real time. But at this point of time, there is a lot of anticipation with respect to what is going on here. So right after ChatGPT became mainstream, very few people now use Google, including me. So I will not look up questions on Google, rather I look it up on ChatGPT, and then if I can't get an answer to that on ChatGPT, I'll do subsequent research on Google. And I also want to talk about MAI, by the way. So I would also choose using Perplexity to get the answers to my questions, primarily because the minute I look something up on Google, you would see that I would be bombarded with advertisements for reading news that I would also find on Reddit, right? But Perplexity kind of summarizes those results for me. So Google is facing problems when it comes to search around when it comes to tools like Perplexity, and now ChatGPT is also working on tools that seem similar to Google but are mostly going to be aligned with how Perplexity looks like. And that's something that I'm predicting right now. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I feel that building something like Perplexity is going to be viable for ChatGPT than building something like a Google, right? Because most people don't use it right now anyways. And by the way, if you haven't heard, Perplexity became a unicorn and they raised crazy amount of money. So the solution is pretty good. And the interesting part is someone even made like an open source clone of Perplexity and they hosted it out somewhere. I think there's an entire code available on GitHub. So you can look it up. So it's not that complex of a solution, but it was a great idea and a lot of users have started adopting it. Anyway, so they're not winning on search. And Microsoft itself is playing their own game, right? So while they own 50% of OpenAI already, they are still, last month itself, they kind of hired Mustafa Suleiman, who was founder of Inflection AI, and they had this chatbot called Pi, which was doing really well. If you talk to the chatbot, I think it was one of the most humanly sounding chatbots when it was first released. But that kind of died because the acquisition, they not only took the founder, but they also took the tech lead from the team. So it's fair enough to say that the company wouldn't be doing so well. They have a new CEO, but I am sure that Microsoft is doing way better than Inflection is right now. So they hired Suleiman to be the head of Microsoft AI. And only a month after that, they've announced this new secret model. Somehow people got a word of it, that it's the model name is MAI-1. It's a 500 billion parameter model, which is bigger than GPT 3.5, which is 175 billion, and smaller than GPT 4, which is 1 trillion. And both of these numbers are anticipated based on the research. But the model is kind of in the middle of both of these models. Now, a few days back, or I think a week back, they announced Phi 3, which is again Microsoft's own small language model, or an SLM, which was trained on, which is 3.8 billion parameter model. And by the way, this is also competing with Gemini Nano, which is Google's own model for small devices. So if you look at overall the market ecosystem right now, Microsoft has small language models. It has OpenAI, so it has access to the best large language models. While it's not directly invested in Perplexity, you can see that ChatGPT is one way or the other working on the lines of something called search. So again, I wouldn't say that this is how Google makes most of the money. But almost in every other business, Microsoft is already competing with Google. In browser side of the story, it wasn't able to do really well. And I think Microsoft's CEO Satya Nadella even approved the fact that it's not going to beat Google on the browser game. He knows that Bing is not going to beat Google directly, but he knows for a fact that they can beat them at search, especially if they build solutions like this, which are evolved than searches. Now, typically, how Google has made money so far is by showing ads on the search results itself. But how Perplexity works is primarily on the subscription model at this point of time, where you look something up, it summarizes things for you, and then you, based on the summary of things, you then respond to the question. And to get all of that, all of these summaries, you pay subscription fees. So Perplexity aims more at subscription while Google aims more for ads. Now, it's not going to overnight change everything, because people are still not going to be paying $10, especially in countries where subscription products are not going to work too well, like India, right? In India, if you publish a product that mandates you to pay first, then use it, it's not going to work. Even if you pay later, it's still not going to work, because in India, what has worked so far is that you show ads and then you make money based on ads. You don't directly let the user pay it, you make them pay by their time. So it seems that it's not going to replace things overnight, but the fact still is that majority of the money that Google might be making would be from these developed countries that are willing to pay for subscription and are willing to not pay their time. So it may cause problems for those countries, or specific those regions per se. But it seems at this point of time, it's in a pretty rough spot, especially in Gen AI per se, if not in other business lines. And I haven't read enough to comment on those. If you look at the AI side of the story, it's kind of tough for them. And I think last week itself, they laid off their entire Python team outside, or specifically in the US, and they're planning to hire more from the countries in Asia, Southeast Asia. Now, I don't exactly know why that happened. I'm sure most people don't know, because it's the board that decided or took the action. But we know for a fact that things are changing, and Google right now is not doing too well when it comes to the AI side of the story. Again, I just wanted to cover this because this seemed very interested. I'm not going to take any more time, and have a good one.